Welcome to Geek Out Weekly, the podcast where we geek out not so strongly on a roughly 7-day basis. I'm your host Aadil, and I'm joined by Ben.
Hey.
It's been a minute. We've had a couple of weeks
hmm
off with you off, and a delayed release of Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes.
But yeah, it's good to have you back. Enjoy your mug. For those of you listening, you aren't able to see this lovely, very linear R2D2 mug.
hmm
That's great.
I've had it for
I have
years.
democracy.
Nice. I like that.
Less good. And this week we're talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now that it's all wrapped up, it was a short 6 episodes. I'm gonna say a little too short for what they wanted to do.
hmm
But let's just get just your initial gestalt opinion of the whole thing.
Um, I liked it. I think I remained, as we kind of discussed after watching the first two episodes. I liked the balance of action versus kind of character building and the intrigue sort of side of things. And I remember us, at least myself, saying I was worried that the things that they are trying, the big topics that they are trying to hit, need to be very well presented, thought out, explored. And I think they did that reasonably well, but not to the level that I think either of us wanted them to.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely probably more on the side of I kind of wish they didn't try and take all this stuff on because it especially in this day and age, bringing in class and race, and then sort of fumbling the first one and really doing like stereotypical messaging on the second one, just kind of eh. It felt so I liked the action kept a pace. I think
Yeah.
it also because they were sort of on the run and like moving around through basically on their own with less support and stuff. My big complaints about like the first set piece being like very confusing when you think about how everything might be laid out and why these helicopters would be here, etc. By making it much more punchy versus missily.
Yeah.
Um, I think
The technical term.
yeah, I think that really helped it out because then the scenes felt more grounded. It also having the enemies be super soldiers on the run, and so a lot of like looking, searching, moving, and then some punchies, etc. Really did a better job at keeping me interested in the action instead of sort of CGI blobs flying about
Yes.
in questionable circumstances. Yeah, so overall I enjoyed it. I unlike WandaVision, which is just a tough act to follow. Really, I don't think I'll rewatch it.
Uh-huh.
But we can go on to our final thoughts after we finished discussing things. So I guess I have I think we should hold on to those big themes until later, but let's
Sure.
talk about I think do more of a character driven discussion of the show rather than sort of episodes because I think characters had certain arcs, and I'm going to start with one which is going to lead us into speculation, which I don't care will be in the middle of the episode because who cares about structure? I think they done Sharon some dirty.
Yeah, that seems fair. Yeah. I mean, you could kind of see it coming, couldn't you? In the episode where they go back to her, was it the second episode where they actually go to her place and she's got all of this? I think the moment for me when she called up Batrock and was chatting to him on the phone, I'm like, shit, she's the power broker.
That was later in the run. I think
it was later in the run. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but they were building up. They were dropping those little hints straight away for you to kind of pick up. It's like, why is she so rich in this place? Wow, she's just done really, really well for herself. How did she know that they were there? And so many things that they kind of dropped in, but they did. They absolutely sort of
So,
I don't know. Does it set her up to be a villain,
well,
or
let's slow down on the setup and let's just talk a bit more about. So, like, we have to remember her past was what she went was on the wrong side of the American government in Civil War,
Mhm,
and so then had to go underground, and then we learned that she ran to Madripoor because it doesn't have extradition,
mhm,
and then Jess was very good at Madripoor, um, and became successful behind the scenes person and doing a lot of art theft trading question
mhm.
mark is how they she was sort of set up and such that thus she had connections, right?
Yeah.
um and even then, like, that episode, I felt this is really strange for that character. Like, the first it was like I had to be a mercenary just to survive because I have a certain set of skills, like, and then it immediately pivoted to art stuff, and you're like, that's not really cutting your teeth to survive in this place. So you're right, that's when the bell started to ring of something is not quite right.
Mhm.
um and then, we fast forward, we find she calls Batroc. She hops in and out of the series, basically helping, doing weird favors when need be,
Yes.
trying to trade for a pardon. uh and I just felt like not only was that makes her seem really weird, with which I have a suspicion about, but it just also didn't get enough screen time to be really believable. The, like, pivots
Mm.
and like pump fakes that they were involved, right? Like,
Mhm.
she, so we end up she ends up being in the final, showing up in the final battle. Spoiler alert: she does some shooting, which is just so that we can have the bad guy disappear and not have the good guy be a killer. But also, it didn't really make sense in the moment, except that she's now evil, quote quote. Like, that's what evil people do. It's kind of our what we talked about with suddenly guns are pulled by the head of Sword at the end of WandaVision. You're like,
Mm.
he wasn't telegraphed. Like, this is just a generic evil move of, and now I shoot you. And it's like, well, this is really weak, even as a, like, oh, you're secretly evil. It was just like, oh, right, you're Marvel evil now.
Yeah, I think in that final fight scene, uh, she is talking to Carly, saying, come back to me, come and work for me back in Madripoor, and wanting the kind of the super soldiers to be part of her retinue, a part of her arsenal as well, about whatever she does in Madripoor to be the power broker and stuff. And I think even though it's not sort of shown, she kind of wants to protect her persona and hide that she's the power broker more than she wants Carly to kind of come back to her. I guess she's more interested in that power that she already has than she is in trying to resolve the situation that she finds herself in. So I can see why they made her shoot Carly, but I think it's more sort of not on a whim as such, but it is just to protect herself. She's like, right, situation's gone. I'll just do this because I can get out of here, rather than it being
Yeah.
kind of like an evil act sort of thing. We're kind of led a little bit further on to think that she is then Marvel evil again in that end scene
Dinger.
where she is given her pardon and they give her back her job.
Which, yeah, so that's
Like,
why I wanted to
sure.
bring this up, because it was just like, well, that don't make any
Yeah.
sense. Like, we're pardoning you, but also here's a well-paid, deep. Well, we're not even going to revet you,
I mean,
like,
yeah,
deep
what have you been doing
secret.
for the last like 5 years? Who knows? We've got
Yeah,
no
it was
idea.
in it, and it felt like so much plot um driven, like,
Hmm.
oh, we need to get her role in the next phase of the MCU, so we're just gonna don't think about this. And I feel like maybe that's colored my viewing of that final scene. You've given a really good explanation of how you could read that, and I
Hmm.
didn't read it that way after I watched the whole episode,
Mm.
because I was like, right, she just needs to be bad, so she shot her, because you've done this really stupid thing later, making me not appreciate that there could have been a more nuanced take.
Yes. Yeah.
um
Absolutely.
but yeah, she just, yeah, it's just disappointing. Bring her back to be telegraphed bad that you had, and I feel like the reason I want to talk to her because it feels so much like my problem with the series, which is very interesting, bringing up interesting things like how do you survive, yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then they also reminded me in one of the episodes that Sharon was snapped, which means since Civil War, there was a 5-year period ending very recently where she wasn't there. So how the fuck did she become and maintain being the power broker?
Was she snapped?
What they mentioned it, and then I looked on MCU
Well,
wiki.
is it mentioned in a way that I don't know? I didn't pick up on that. I obviously missed that part. Whether it's
Let me
again,
double check.
maybe that's part of the part of the misinformation that she put out there, that she wasn't snapped. She was building up her empire, but she made it seem like she was snapped. If you know what I mean. But
Yeah,
who
so,
knows?
I mean,
I didn't pick up on that. So
yeah, so I mean, according to the MCU fandom wiki, she was a snap blip person, which is just so weird, right? So then she like, how did she possibly? So then she became the power broker in even less time,
yeah.
and disappeared and reappeared, and everyone's like, "Yep, you're still in this like cutthroaty place. You're still fine?" Question mark. Like it really just felt like you don't really care about this character. You just want to have the moving pieces, and so long as they seem okay at the time. So even like if I'm the power broker, I don't want. I know how good Bucky and Falcon are. I'm not gonna help them find my scientist who has the only way of making this serum and hasn't yet made more since 20 serum vials have been taken. That's the plot of the power broker, and it's like, how is she possibly leading them directly to this
Mm-hmm.
guy
Mm-hmm.
with Zemo? And then like shooting who? She called in people to attack them because they did something against the power broker, and now she's shooting the people she wants to give a reward to. And this just seems like, no, if she actually managed to be the power broker, she could machinate and better
Mm-hmm.
than this. Like this is what I mean about like doing her dirty, even the like making her like evil. I'm fine with that's interesting plot, but it's just so thin
Yeah.
upon inspection, and this
Yep.
is one of the reasons why I don't want to go back and watch it, because then it's like a lot of these twists make the early episodes not great. I don't think like more
Mm-hmm.
confusing. And then so yeah, so that I just wanted to bring up because I think it's a good parallel for the way I think the series is like a lot of this scene's really cool at the time moments,
Yeah.
but doesn't really make sense. But so she gets her job back, leaves the Senate house thing, the place where all of the things happen,
Mm-hmm.
because sets are
Government
expensive.
Building 1.
Yeah. And then she immediately goes on her phone and is like, I have access to anyone on the staircase.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I don't like when movies like do this dramatic thing, and it's like, there's you're not even pretending. Like I get that it's a cool looking scene, but you're not even pretending. And so my hypothesis is that she's a Skrull.
Yes, yes. I also
I mean,
thought
right.
that as well. Yeah. We've already seen
And
that in the
then the
stinger
turn makes sense, and it's very
Yeah.
it also makes sense why they kind of shoved it in kind of those last moments to help bring on the next
Uh-huh.
phase, because that's always the difficult thing on these Marvel pieces, is
It is. And
adding the intrigue afterwards while trying to pretend like you've wrapped things up.
yes, and I think they'll, I reckon that this first slate of movies and things that are going to be coming out won't be dealing with the Skrull until we get to Captain Marvel 2. We saw kind of the end stinger with WandaVision as well, which featured them. They whether we'll see that come up in Loki as well, whether they'll just again as a stinger sort of thing building up to that, and then a few of the films will kind of lead in to then that being the combination of Avengers, whatever that's going to be, or Captain Marvel leading into that sort of thing. So I think they're dropping hints and they're kind of pushing that a little bit in their series whilst not making it sort of the dominant part. And as we've just talked about, we can see how if you deconstruct it a little bit, doesn't really fit in with everything else that they're trying to do kind of on each of the series. So
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I really liked WandaVision, because it like lent on previous MCU stuff without making it like required reading, but really didn't do a lot of the foreshadowing except for the final stinger and stuff, and just knowing that like, oh, you're the chaos magic is probably, we know she's going to be in Thing, and like some of the lines about chaos magic were like clearly specifically specific jargon instead of general jargon, but
yep.
they played both roles, so it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like all those scenes with Agatha being like, yes, you were prophesized to da chaos magic is blah 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 blah, and it's like, yeah, that's just in the storyline. She's worried about this person.
Yeah.
Cool. But also we know that these specific things, because we know about the comics and we know she's in the Doctor Strange movie, we know this is actually foreshadowing. That's done really well. This feels like, at some point, makes like getting a note, make Sharon say evil thing and get job back.
Yes.
And then like, okay, we'll just paste a scene in, because we weren't doing a lot with Sharon. It's also, yeah. She also like just shows up in New York? ?
Yeah.
Illegally ? And then sorry, I'm gonna stop harping. Well, I'm not, but she shows up and it's like, Bucky, what are you doing here? Says generic government goon, and then she goes, they're like 3 steps past the police line, and she takes this, Mission Impossible mask off.
Yeah.
She goes, don't worry, it's me.
Yeah.
And you're like, but you're. And then she's just Sharon for the rest of the episode because they want to use the actress, but it's like, this makes no sense, and it feels so stupid, and she's never caught out on it, and she's even at the big scene of the climax, and she like is bleeding, but like. So we've got this circle of ambulances and police cars where the big speech happens. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then he's like, time to walk away, and no reporters follow him. And then it's him and Bucky, and they're Sharon bleeding against a car. And you're like, what? None of these people looked behind this magic circle? Because the writing it's just, like I said, it's this moment to moment without thinking about what the world is. And that's like what constantly let me down, was all these. Visually, this makes sense, but in the language, in the actual world, it doesn't, and it's really frustrating when it's consistently like that. Another example of that is when Bucky confronts Zemo, and he like points a gun, and then he's like, click, and then he drops all his bullets on the ground, and then the people from Wakanda come, and you're like, so now he just bends over and picks up these bullets? What the fuck is, like, what was he thinking? Like, he clearly wanted to like put the fear of death of him and then be like blah, but why would you need to drop the bullets? Except someone had the idea of, it would look cool if he then showed that it was empty because he dropped the bullets. It's like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
And then when the Wakanda people came, like, we're taking him to the raft, I also was like, wait, isn't the raft the international prison? Didn't they want to?
Yeah, that was an odd thing that wasn't kind of quite resolved. I think because he was in a prison in like Berlin. Is that where they first broke Zemo out of? But do the Wakandans have some kind of special contract with the people at the raft? Do they go? Do they travel around the world finding people to take them to the raft?
Well, so,
I mean, it was odd. You expected them to take him back to Wakanda and maybe he have a small part in, say, Black Panther 2. But it's not. It's like, yeah, we'll just take him over here. He's done until we want to use him next.
Well, and we want him with all the other bad guys in case that's useful.
But
again, it's just like,
at one point when the power on the raft goes down, and
none of the motivations made sense, right? Like, it just like they gave Bucky an 8-hour thing earlier in the movie because they want him because he killed Black Panther's dad. OG, well, not OG, but previous Black Panther.
Yes. Right?
And then it's like, yeah, we're taking him to the raft. And you're just like, what? And like, there's, so that scene struck me because it was both of those things. It was the too cool for school moment that doesn't make sense, with the zoom in on bullets falling. And then it's like, but we're okay. And then it's, wait, he's going where? And it's like, well, that doesn't, Yeah, were they just like really interested in getting him back into a prison, but not the one he was broken out of, which they were okay with before because they didn't try to break him out. Like, and see, it's these little things that as soon as you start tugging, you're like, oh, if they didn't want him back in Wakanda, okay, that explains why he wasn't. They didn't try and just steal him from the Berlin prison, also
Mm.
because international stuff. But they've also broken international borders and stuff, and then they aren't. They're just like this different government, and it's so confusing. And it's such a small scene that doesn't need to be confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, it's kind of a bit of an abrupt end for Zemo as well. I think they could have used him a little bit more, based upon being their tour guide around for a couple of episodes and doing all of this stuff and being one of the most interesting characters in
Yeah,
the
I was.
entire series. And it's like, bye, thanks.
Yeah,
And we see a little bit later on in the last episode as well that he can still pull the strings in some ways. With his butler just kind of doing dirty and setting bombs in trucks and stuff, because obviously that's
but
the skill
those
he
trucks
has.
have
But
got like the worst guarded thing.
they're the
Like,
worst made, worst guarded, possibly vehicle ever in Marvel history. I mean, every vehicle seems to just explode at random at some point.
yeah,
But yeah, he kind of it was a nice little wrap up to see that kind of thing. But I wanted more Zemo.
yeah. I mean, like, Zemo was the next on my list to chat about. Just tell me why you wanted more Zemo.
I just Daniel Bruhl just acts him exceptionally well. He's just got this quiet arrogance, this almost deferred arrogance about him. He panders to people. He's very good and he's very Daniel Bruhl's very soft in the way that he speaks and portrays Zemo as well. But you can tell that he is just trying to find his way in to be able to manipulate or a way in with a situation to be able to swing it in his kind of way. It's a really interesting character considering he's got no powers and he has this big kind of not vendetta against the Avengers, but he wants this like equalizing moment to make sure that there isn't anyone who can be super powerful kind of out there. And always has that in the back of his mind still, irrelevant of kind of what is going on or what happens. That is his through line, and he maintains that. I think he's one of the better written characters in the show.
It's funny because a lot of my complaints about other characters is they either have no arc
Mm.
or they have a like and now I'm okay arc. Where it's like, oh yeah, again it's like we're on episode 6, so I guess you're now fine in this way or whatever, right? And actually Zemo, by being a villain from something before, um and him being not a main character, doesn't have to go through a redemption arc, and he's
Yes.
a much better character because his through line is part of his character. It's not just that he didn't progress. It's just he's like a zealot against overpowered things, and that's why he's also an interesting villain, because it's ostensibly for the betterment of humanity, but he's killing people, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just like, we shouldn't have big people. He shoots the scientist, right? Sharon's buddy. Because we can't like even if it's only a matter of time before someone else figures out this serum, because it's science, that's how science works. He's just like, well, we can stop it for a while. I like, I'm constantly thinking about that, which is why he picked up the gun in the craziness of the lab, not to escape, but to do the thing he did.
Yes.
And then he's like, still need my help escaping.
Yep.
You can take my gun away, I don't care, but if I have it, I can escape, right? And he had that wonderful reveal of like when he was in his little car, he found an old version of his mask, and then he's just like he just was on top of everything because he was planning scheming the whole time. He was just like, I can do this and this, and then it's like, and then he got them free, and he was very useful, and he was just a really great character who they couldn't trust, but Bucky also, because he's a gray area person, was just like, this is the best way, is to trust this guy who because Bucky understands him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he knows that Zemo's not going to, he's not like a crazy generic bad. He's not going to go out and just kill random people. He's got a terrible plan, and we need to make sure he goes back in jail. But we can kind of trust him so long as our paths are together. And right now, our paths are super soldier oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And then he immediately regrets that when it's like, we found the scientist. Right, the fuck. Of course, you shot him. Right, but yeah,
Who could have seen it coming?
Yeah, and then yeah, it's just like having him escape through the sewers. Was cool, right? He like outplayed the 3 different factions of good guys, ostensibly. Great. But then to have it be like, I know where to find him. He's gonna be at this memorial at the exact same moment after a fucking boat fixing montage or whatever, like, because that's where it was after the boat fixing. So it's like weeks and weeks and weeks have passed, or at least 2, but probably longer, question mark. I don't know what everyone else is doing during this sidebar, but like he just appears and he's like, yep, found you at that place you asked me if I had gone once. Because what, were you just standing there for days waiting to be caught? Like, it's such a shitty way to like get him caught after he escaped in such an elaborate way.
Yes.
After he like he outsmarted them and got to the pouch and broke all but 1 vial, because he's just like so singularly focused and so clever. And then for him to be like, I want to get caught, question mark, I don't know, maybe, but like it just was, it also isn't how he would want to get caught, because it's just like standing at a CGI statue.
And it's you know, if he wanted to get caught, why not just turn himself in? Why not he just goes to, why wait and have this even scene with Bucky and all of that sort of
well
stuff?
And like, did he know that he'd get put in the raft instead of taken to Wakanda? Like, it's just, if that ends up being a thing, like he's secretly schemed to get in there, you're like, well, this is dumber than dumb.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's just, yeah, I think those series of episodes were with him like in the bath, having whiskey, giving candy to children, and telling them not to trust the police. Like, it was all very, very good. And then to have him just kind of shuffled away until this, like, oh right, let's remind people they liked Zemo. Just,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. It's talking about this when we're talking about Sharon and Zemo and stuff. We haven't, you know, hit on how there's so many characters in this show. So many things
for
kind
6
of
episodes.
Going on for 6 episodes. And what were they? They were about between 40 minutes and an hour, roughly,
yeah,
I think, per episode. So
like 45-ish.
So we're maybe about 5 hours, something around that. So it's not something they could have done, you know, as a film. And we were saying, you know, I hope this isn't just like an extended film in that sort of sense. And it's just full of sort of action moments and things like that. And I think they made it a successful enough TV series that it didn't feel like a film. You know, it wasn't sort of, here is each act and played over a couple of episodes sort of thing. I think they did quite well in making a show and containing the parts of the stories they wanted to within that. But it does feel like some of it was then rushed. As you said at the top, you know, that there was probably more. You know, this could have been another episode and had a little bit more kind of exploration into the characters and just done extra stuff to flesh out everything that they were trying to kind of do. And part of that would have been at least fucking 10 more minutes of Zemo. That's all we needed. Just 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and I think that the episode 5 sort of was like essentially that was our main characters have not moved or progressed or really interacted that much, so we'll just dedicate an episode to them hanging out in a way that doesn't make sense when you think about how much time has passed since they were at each other's throats in their weird therapy session in prison, question mark. Like, that's not like a few days and a lot of battles doesn't suddenly make them chummy, drinking beers, I'll fix your boat stuff, except that's what the plot needed, right? Yeah. And it's a fun little episode. It just, again, doesn't hold up to any sort of notion of, wait, would they do this? And then most of that episode is just wrapping up bringing up the race issue again that they sort of let go for a few episodes so that they could remind us that they're trying to make a point. And aren't communities great? And maybe the bank screwing people over isn't a big deal because, look, everything happened, that works out in the end, question mark.
We've
and
got
yeah,
enough
just these,
favors just to be able to call in to help us out in our time of need. And you're like, well, that's great for you.
and they
But that
have
ain't
these
the
water
fucking
pumps. Like
yeah.
they all have these parts and whatever. Yeah, it was really frustrating
Mm.
because it's so Disney and kind of Ubisoft feels of like we're being political but pretending like it's not,
Yes, and
acknowledging of the
there's
things.
kind of that the idea as well, and we can get into kind of how the show portrays, say, like America and that, but there's very much then that counterpoint to kind of what Carly is saying with everything that's happened to all of these people that have been displaced, taken in by these countries and then either kicked out again or displaced from the homes that they've been given because everyone has come back. And then it jumps back to America. It's like, all these people on tough times in America, though, we pull together. We get it done for them, sort of thing. And it's weird that they've got this whole idea about class and how that's going to work. It's like, don't worry about that. We're just going to get rid of that for a moment to just show you how good this is and how our characters in this sort of way come together and progress. And then we'll kind of go back to that idea
Yeah.
about class because that's in a completely different country. That's somewhere else. It's not it's not America. It's the rest of the world, and it just
Yeah.
like that whole idea when we were talking about how are they going to deal with the world sort of stage? Governments coming together and what they're doing. Everything again, just back to America. We're going to talk about this in New York. We're going to talk about it. It seems to be just like American senators all hanging around deciding the
Well, no, those people who were all the GRC council was
GRC,
people from
yes.
different places. It's really wild that the American representative on the GRC is also a senator.
Yeah,
Because you'd think one of those jobs would be full time and the other would also be full time. But I can forgive that just because like comic books do shortcuts. Like this type of fiction can do those types of shortcuts. It doesn't make sense to have a second generic American guy. It's the same reason why he's like presiding over pardons and also
he does a lot.
it's
doesn't
fine. Yeah, it's fine. I think that's one of those things I can suspend my disbelief for because you already have too many people, etc. He can be generic white dude being generic white dude role, right? Roles. But yeah, it's just like, okay, sure, the GRC is like the UN, I guess. That's why it's in New York. And the second largest speaking role was the representative from Pakistan, I think.
Right.
Right. But yeah, it's just this. Okay, well, we're into it, right? So let's wrap up my problem with the Sam's family line problems was it was real and legitimate, and there was good tension in the first few episodes of you can't have it all your way, Sam. You can't be the hero and run off, but expect that nothing changes in your family when you don't help.
Yes.
And yeah, it turns out your magic name doesn't get us a mortgage because it's just it's fame. It's not money. And then it turns into I really didn't like how they made so we can't sell the boat, which was done really quickly, and I kind of missed that. I was like, oh right, because it's just been a minute since we talked about the boat.
Yes.
But he's a stickler keeping the boat, and then she's like, we need to sell it. He's like, fine, but instead she's like, well, we can't sell it. No one will buy it. He's like, fine, I will find people to fix the boat. And it's like, cool, it's a compromise. He has some downtime and he's going to get it so the boat can be fixed so they can save the house, because there was kind of this tension between the two. And they get all these people in this very again, don't worry about the plight of black people because they can always help each other, even though they're all poor, kind of weird messaging. Because the whole point is I thought that they were like microcosm, like they were showing the struggles, but actually it turns out all their neighbors had enough free time and capital and labor to just help these guys out. It's like, okay, so they weren't so subtly, it's telling us the rest of them weren't struggling so much that they didn't need help as well, which is why it rings really gross to me, because it seems like very happy, everyone's helping each other, but actually it's sending the message of they don't need help outside of each other, but also they didn't all need help, otherwise they couldn't have done this. Anyway, so we get to this and then we're like, cool, and fucking Sam has the paintbrush. He's like, okay, well, we're trying to sell the boat, gotta wipe the name. And then his sister's like, we can't do it. I've changed my mind. You get your way. The boat's magically fixed by the community and no money? Question
Yeah.
mark. Um, and also the entire point of your strife with your sister that was giving some notion of groundedness to real people, which was like you said, theoretically a contrast with Carly, which is why they have this weird connection.
Mhm.
Nah, it's fine.
Yeah.
We're at the last two episodes, so we're not even. You could just sell the boat. It doesn't matter. The boat has almost no stakes, but no, they have to do it so that everything is perfect for the way they see their characters wanting it.
Absolutely, yes.
And it was just like, fuck this boat. Like Molotov that. Someone blow up that boat. He doesn't get the boat. It's the wrong message.
And it's a strange.
Smash the boat. I'm a boat smasher, man.
It's the same with the idea of kind of Sam becoming Captain America and him coming to terms with taking on that role as well. You know, it happens at the same time. Him flinging the shield around in the trees and him training and stuff when he is back at his kind of like family home and they're doing the boat up and stuff. And there was no kind of, again, we've got this weird disconnect between kind of what's happening in Carly's cause versus what is happening in this very small community. But then there was also a disconnect, and I don't know whether they tried to connect it in some way between the community coming together and Sam feeling something for the community and everyone having it and becoming Captain America. There was no.
Oh, I didn't get that at all.
No,
I don't think that was a connection.
It kind of seems like it should have been, right? It's just, hey, let's resolve some family stuff. I mean, tie that all in some kind of way, rather than him just being like, I'll just go and train and hang out in the trees and stuff and kind of take my time, talk to Bucky a bit, and we'll be, you know, and I can be kind of Captain America and I can come to terms with it. But there's definitely scope to tie all of that in one sort of thing. If you're gonna
but then you'd have to be doing more than lip service and like pastiche moments.
Yes,
like
yes,
even
absolutely.
Isaiah was like a really cool character who basically said no self-respecting black man could ever wear the stars and bars or whatever, right? Like, and you're like, shit, I get it from his perspective. You made a big deal about this, like and its impact on Sam, the testing, etc. It's like they bring it up multiple times.
Yep.
There's this weird moment where his sister knows about him, but then he tells her about him. It's a very oddly written scene. But yeah, we have this. It's like very good. And then we end up having him not be like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but also I've got the shield. Well, now I've got the shield. You don't want the shield. And then he just starts training with the shield. And then I'm holding off on talking about the big speech at the end because I think we need to set up all the moving parts.
Sure.
But in that speech, we see Isaiah watching TV and then crying. Like, oh, that speech moved me. It's like, no, it fucking didn't. Didn't you hear yourself 2 episodes ago? This is 30 years of your life that you were tested on and ignored and whatever. And, like, you're okay with this guy doing that because he's saying, well, like, some people might... He even said, like, some people might not agree with me, and that's the struggle I have, right? But then you make Isaiah being like, he's a good guy. It's like, no, you're one of the writers. You wrote that line about you wrote Isaiah to be the symbol of the people who say you can't do this, and then you end up making Isaiah be kind of cool with it. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have these connections. It seems so obvious that you wanted this and this to be pieces to interlock, and then you're like, nah.
Yeah.
But what if everyone was just smiley because it's the last episode? and it's just so fucking frustrating because it makes it seem so much thinner. It's like you brought up these heavy issues. You seem to be building up to a thing, and to just drop the ball on all these issues, it's like, okay, well then it turns out I was probably just reading into this that you had grand ideas, but actually you were just trying to say these are cash-inable ideas. Like, I'm just going to turn cynical when you don't connect these obvious things and you don't make it so that there's still some conflict, because it's just easier if Sam and / Captain America is loved by everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, that's not what you were doing.
And it's and again, we can see how they're sort of building up to that with John Walker
Oh, I'm glad
where
you jumped
he
in, John. So,
where
do
he
you have any
then
last thoughts on Sam? Because I think that's his arc, basically,
I think
outside of the
that is his arc. We'll get to the final part,
yeah.
I suppose, for him. It also says it shows you again the cachet of the title of Captain America, that he then
Mm,
got a statue and some part within the Captain America kind of museum for Isaiah. He got Sharon pardoned as well. You know, all of these things that he couldn't do, and then suddenly there's an acceptance that he is Captain America, and he's like, right, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. You know, I can use
yeah.
the title now to do the things that I think kind of should be done. Um, again, it kind of builds into John Walker the idea that we were talking about. You know, the government want Captain America to be their kind of person. It's
Their
not,
symbol, yeah.
yeah, to be the symbol for America, but for the American government as well.
Yeah.
And he has his arc, and he goes through. He takes the super soldier serum, and then he just kills one of the flag smashers with the shield, and it all kind of falls apart for him. And we can see that build up in what they want Captain America to be, and then how that relates to kind of Sam in the last episode, and how he goes about doing all of the action scenes and stuff and things kind of later on. You can see what they're trying to build Captain America up to be with this, and the sort of the rise and fall of these different characters as the title of Captain America.
Yeah.
But I think again, John is in some parts I really like the character, in some parts I really didn't like the character. He's meant to be this like cool under combat kind of soldier, and he does mention at some point when he was talking to his partner's name, Battlestar.
His partner's name wasn't Battlestar. What was his name? Oh, I had it in my head, and now I've lost it.
I've ruined it. The flow is gone.
Yeah.
I thought it was Battlestar. I think it's Battlestar. Battlestar Galactica. No. We'll find that out. But they were having that conversation, and he said, you know, taking the super soldier serum makes you more true.
Oh, it is Battlestar. It's
Yeah.
Lamar.
Lamar.
Lamar
That's it.
Battlestar.
Yeah. It makes it a more true version of yourself. You're then able to be more you. And Walker as well kind of says, you know, yes, I got those medals, but I got those medals for like the worst day of my life, and I have to repeat that kind of over and over and over again. And you can see that he's got this like PTSD, and that then comes out when he is, you know, supered up, and Lamar is killed, and he just goes fucking nuts. He's like, he just loses it. He snaps, and he's kind of wavering on that point, and we're sat there going, this is meant to be the best person to be Captain America that the government have kind of put forward. They're like, this is who we want. This is who we think is going to do a great job.
Like
Absolutely. And it shows us the kind of the title of Captain America can't just make you Captain America as such.
Yeah.
And I think that part of John's story was really good. I liked that thing.
Yeah.
I didn't like the character
you don't
so
like
much.
John.
Yes,
but
exactly.
You like what they did, and
Yes.
like having him also like there's some telegraphing with Isaiah saying some of the serums were like not so good.
Mm-hmm.
We know like even I think Carly and the gang sort of hinted at like this was hard on you, and like it was like I'm on fire, etc. And he's like gone through this and hidden it from everyone that he's just had all this pain and he's all muddled in the head, but he's got bravado. So it makes sense that even if he was less of a douchebag, though, he might snap this way because he's in this really stressful, weird place, and his only tether to the world just died, and it's been his tether for a long time. We find out, right? Yeah, and he just fucking murders this guy in public, and you know he doesn't even realize he's in public because he's just like you. And Wyatt Russell does such a good job of telegraphing that, like that he's so focused in the way his body moves and the way he's looking, and the way they capture that. You know, the shots they take, it's just so obvious that he's just single-minded, like fuck you, right? And then afterwards he's just like, oh right, the world. But I think that was really well done, and it had a good arc for John Walker. But one of the things I didn't like was like he started out he looked like the guy you, and I know they were trying to show that he was secretly not as good of a guy, but like I don't think they showed that in the writing and the screen time of the character. I think
Hmm.
they just made it such that it went from he's really nervous and this good wholesome guy who has all these medals of honor to hey guys, and also like hey guys, I really want to work together, like let's do this. I'm genuinely trying to do this and you are Cap's team. And yeah, sure, he misspoke about sidekicks or whatever, but you could see that kind of being fumbling. And then the next time you see him, he's just like, fuck those guys.
Yes,
And
yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
what happened?
yep.
And like that turn wasn't telegraphed. It
Hmm.
was just like, and now he has to be the bad for a couple episodes. And he made it so that like his anguish in that moment was more understandable, but it was like that's only because of a weird move before.
Mm.
And then and then and then he goes back to being somewhere in the middle, I guess, with the
Yep.
like the scene where he gets not honorably discharged.
Hmm.
And he's like, I just want to say my piece. I just want to say my piece. It's like, most fucking tell the reporters. That's how they do it in the world. I don't know why you like. And then, but I liked that he. So that was all like, the middle part of his character was just a mess. But then he goes to tell a lie, right? Because Carly's the one who killed Lamar.
Hmm.
And he tells Lamar's parents, I killed that guy because I couldn't let the guy who killed your,
Yes.
like he lies because it's actually just rage against this group. He sees them all as another. That's why he's a flawed character. He's looking for revenge on all of them. Even if revenge on one of them made sense, he's still not doing that.
Mm.
And I thought that was a very good thing, and I'm glad they didn't dwell on it. They just like they showed didn't tell, which is a thing the series struggles with. So then he has to right that wrong. So he has to go back out. So he makes his own new shield and has his Medal of Honor he earned with Lamar on the inside, which I really
Yes.
liked
Yeah, yeah.
because it was to remind him of what he was doing, and like those touches were so good. But then he sort of just is generically accepted. But like then the fight scenes don't make any sense because these guys just beat you up. You have no reason to now be buddies with them.
Hmm.
They definitely don't want to be buddies with you. You're a goddamn murderer. They saw and they know exactly what you were doing, and they know you stole the super soldier serum. And they're all just like walking down halls and tunnels together, and you're like, well, this is dumb. And now I don't care about John anymore because he's just become a generic sidekick, and all the tension with the rest of the world you've just written away.
Yeah, I mentioned to Kim on that on the scene where they're walking through the tunnels to look for Carly and the rest of them. Like, so I know Sam's now got his Captain America Falcon suit on, and he's got the shield, and he's got the wings, and all this sort of stuff. But you've just sent two super soldiers one way, and then
And
just
one
regular guy the other way. And I get that they wanted to put Sam on his own to get him into that sort of
But
situation, but it's just like, what? Who out of all three of you has any kind of experience
tactical
in these
sense.
tactical experience in these situations? Like,
Also,
just
there's
go,
no way
just
John
run
would
with it.
go with either of them. John's the one who should, like, you write that scene where John's like, I'll go this way because I want to kill these fuckers. I
Yep.
don't want anyone to stop me. These aren't my friends.
Mm.
And then John finds Carly and starts beating her, and then Falcon stops them both, right?
Yep.
That's how
Yep.
you make all three of them in a fight scene make sense. It also
Absolutely.
makes sense that it would be 2 versus 1 to put Carly on the back foot because she's a super soldier and
Hmm.
Falcon's a jetpack man. Um, like, and it's all like it's so strange. Like I said, it's just like this kind of writes itself. And they might want. I'm not the writer. I'm not saying you did wrong. It's just weird given the way you've made these characters that they would literally take those steps.
Yeah, and
Um,
again, talking about John and his want for revenge, they come out that when the other guys come out, Bucky's just like, "We got you, surround them, guys," and John's just kind of stood back, like, "Sure, I guess I won't get my revenge. I'll just let them all take these guys away." And
yeah, because
so
because somewhere in the middle of those fight scenes, he just became one of the team.
yeah,
Right? That's why they're not questioning him. That's why he's no longer revenge given, and that's why he's got such a shitty raw deal. And then,
Mm.
you just see another one of those many wrap up scenes of just like, oh right, fucking Elaine DeGeneres has got, like, No, that's Ellen. What's Elaine? What's her name from Seinfeld? I've got my '90s sitcom Ellen's and Elaine's mixed up.
What's her
What's a character name?
something Defray? I don't
It
know. I
doesn't matter.
can't remember the character name. I can't
Elaine, yeah,
remember.
Elaine is just like, we something's coming and we need a U.S. agent. Cool, I get it. That's fine. But it's like that's not actual wrap up for the character. His arc just died in the middle of a fight scene where revenge just left his body like a spirit. Like, okay,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And this is exactly why I say I really like him and I really dislike him, because there's some fantastic bits and he's played very, very well. And then again, just at the end to wrap things up so quickly, it's like, nah, all of his motivation's gone. Don't worry about it. Just sure.
Elaine Benes. That's Julie Louise Dreyfus's character name. Yeah, so that's him. I think Bucky basically didn't have a character arc except he got over his PTSD question mark.
Yes, and that this is one of the things that kind of annoyed me. It's called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right?
Where's the Winter Soldier in this?
It's about both of them, but it isn't. It isn't.
No, it's actually secretly origin story for Captain America too.
Yes, and it got to that point as well where we see him get over his PTSD. We see him kind of shed off the title of the Winter Soldier. He's got that, and yet the end credit scene when it says Captain America and the Winter Soldier, you're like, oh good, so Sam's got his title, but Bucky's still the Winter Soldier, even though he's not the Winter Soldier.
Hey, the Winter Soldier is a title representing a very bad time in his life.
Exactly.
And
are they telling us there's no resolution for him, even though they've suggested that there's a resolution for him?
Because it wasn't a show. Yeah, it's fair. They started to like. I really liked in those first couple episodes of him trying to make peace the way he knows, and then like the callback later on was like, yeah, you're not though, right?
Yeah.
You know you're not. Nothing in the middle happened to suggest that he had actually moved from point A to point B, but he was now at point B, and he's like, you're right, I need to do this, and he does the thing that the father, right, the guy he was having ramen with once a week to torture himself because he couldn't just tell this guy he killed his son.
Yep.
That scene was good, and then it was weird where he made eye contact with the waitress he walked out of the date on.
Yeah.
It's like, and she just like nodded at him, so it's like
it's cool, it's all cool now.
But like again, that makes sense in the sense of it's supposed to be a closure and he walks away scene. But what's her perspective? She either knows him as the guy who used to have lunch with this dude who walked out on a date for me and I've never seen him again, or this dude has told me he was an assassin who killed his son and he's just a monster who's been having lunch with him every week. Either way, I'm not giving him the nod.
Yeah.
Like that's just not what happens.
You'd
That
expect
character
that she
doesn't
kind of
make
go,
any sense.
wide-eyed because she'd seen him hovering in the window, like, oh fuck,
Like-
what's he gonna do? Like,
Yeah, or just fuck you. You walked out on a date for me. There's no middle ground between. Like her epistemic position doesn't get you to a point where she's happy to see him or whatever. It's just dumb because they want a closure scene and they can't have the old man do it because they know well enough to be like, he can't be the guy like, well, let's go for lunch even though you killed my son because you finally was honest with me. Like, so they're just like, well, she's part of that little trio, so she'll nod knowingly. Sure, just don't think about it. Move on. We're wrapping things up. Shut up. Right? And so Bucky was frustrating, but like, and also like you said, the screen time was just so negligible. And I really like the character. And at the same time, like, episode 5 was suddenly Bucky's on Sam's side. I liked that he was like, when he apologized for not understanding why Sam didn't pick up the shield, like he understood more. Like that was part of his and Sam's arc, but he didn't really. Didn't give enough support to explain his arc.
Yeah, he is just he's integral to Sam's arc, but he doesn't have his own, or he should have, and there is something there for him to have his own arc. It's not an arc. It's just it's just 2 points next to each other, and there's no
like
movement between them. It's just like blip. It's like, oh, okay, cool, fine.
So let's talk about Carly, and then and then we'll wrap up with how the show wrapped up. not these individual storyline, but the big scene that is supposed to be the like thesis statement of the show, essentially. Um, but so Carly, I like her cause. I like that they brought it up. The idea of these displaced people and refugees and the plight of the downtrodden in the modern world. Like the vague strokes are very important in
Yes.
post financial crisis. You could argue post pandemic definitely will be a thing. Like these big events that have impacts, economic and social impacts on people. The Flag Smashers sort of can be representative of all these things, right? And that's sort of the point of the first few episodes, right? The Flag Smashers have a huge following because the message ain't wrong.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and people, on Twitter and in articles and whatever, and ourselves were wondering how do you square the circle of them being the bad guys? Do you just bite the proverbial bullet and have them not actually be the bad guys so that the message can stay clean? No, just behind the backs of her trusted right hand man, she just decides to blow up a car next to a building and kill X people because this is the only way they could listen after months and months of fighting in a different way and getting traction for the first time.
Yep. Yep.
And it's just like, right. She's got to be bad, and you can't say her message is wrong, so you'll just make her evil
Yep.
and hope people won't notice that doesn't change that the message isn't bad. Um, but we definitely can't be a corporation secretly saying be good to people and not terrible. Oh, yeah, she's just gotta be evil, doesn't she? She's just gonna, just with no telegraphing, become a zealot, basically. And it was very frustrating. Like, I would have ranted for like a good 15 minutes had we recorded an episode after episode 4, I think it was, or whatever, because there's just, fuck you. Like, this is so novice, like, it's so obvious. And, like, so many people have talked about it. You can just Google it if you want to read articles. But, like, this is not an unknown observation. It just was infuriating because it then became, well, we all have the right to hunt these people down. We don't have this moral quandary of, like, Sam trying to talk her down. All this other stuff they've done. It's just now, well, she killed, like, they killed someone. We don't know the circumstances, but they killed someone. So I guess we get to kill them.
Yep.
Or whatever, or capture them, or not entertain the cause, or start ignoring the hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, I guess, right, of people who they're representing a cause, but we're still going to trade on the idea that they have this support, but we're not even going to give a shit about that support for the rest of the narrative.
Yes. Yeah. Very much. Yeah.
It's just like literally a flag was flipped, a switch was flipped, or I was thinking like a software flag. And that now it's like, cool, they did bad, so they're generically bad. It's like, it's not how. That's very bad moral view of the world.
There was a scene when she gets Batroc on board with her, where they sort of activated the app and everyone kind of gets up to come towards them, sort of thing. And you can sort of see that they're still trading on that idea.
Oh no, I'm saying they're trading on it, but they're not, like, in the sense of it makes them seem more bad and more equipped, and so there's stakes.
Yes.
But the rest, like the lead characters and the audience, are no longer really caring about the plight of the flag.
Yes.
All the nuance of the flag smashers and the weirdness about they're not wrong, right? It's just thrown out the window as soon as the car bomb happens. Suddenly, the way the news talks about them, the way the main characters talk about them, it's all, we got to stop them. And then all the people become this like shadow organization, and they're all bad guys. Like, there's no nuance to them. It's just people standing up and like, look, they've got an army secretly. And the next time you see these people, there's secretly guards at the GRC. They're not everyday people. Like, it's just so obvious that they're like, and now these are bad people. We can do what we want.
Yep.
And so yeah, Carly's arc is essentially, I've become a bad guy. I'm a zealot. And also, I think if you did rewatch, you would see that, like, a lot of her comments to, like, they give some dissenting voices in her group, but they all just like, well, she said the slogan, which I liked, because that's sort of what happens when you have top-down power, right?
Yes.
But like, she's just like, they have to listen. We're gonna do this. But even with, she's like 6 people and a bunch of people on an app, but she's still hiding moves. because she's like, the point is we're gonna stop the vote. It's like, no, I'm gonna kill them all.
Yeah.
And it's like, you haven't even done the zealotry part well enough writing wise, because then you would have like made her like the other people could be zealots too. That would make more sense than she's just this leader of this loose network, but now is short up power. But also these other people who have just as much physical power are questioning her, making her more of a big bad because it's easier for the narrative. But then I think they would have not tried to kill people
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she said so. Because you can't give
Mm.
me the dissent in a speech and then not in the actions that are way worse.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think the flag smashers as such aren't used very well. The little group of super soldiers, right? It's kind of Carly's show in that sense. They, as you said, dissenting voices, but they kind of fall in line with her and just then go ahead anyway. And they're like, well, Carly said it's okay, so we should do that. And now the old Captain America, John Walker's here, so now we'll just fight him, I guess, and then we'll try and do this. And Carly's going to take this truck and do whatever she wants with it. Fine, I guess so. And it does feel that Carly kind of, you can sense her frustration that she has been trying things, that things aren't moving, that she kind of elevates the things that she is willing to do to kind of get through this, and that also idea that she is still quite a young person, and having that not sort of a change of heart, but kind of rolling with things like, shit, this isn't going to work. Now I just need to do something, and it's going to be the most extreme possible thing I could do because my mind is going nuts and I don't know what else to happen. Fuck it, kill all of them. Like, I can kind of see a little bit where that could come from, but again, not explained anywhere near enough. We see a lot of the time when she is very calm and quite measured in the conversations that she has over the phone with with Bucky and with Sam. The idea that she phoned up his sister and threatened her, and then on the phone straight to Sam, she's like, I'm not going to hurt them. Like, I had to talk to you, and that was the way that my brain thought that I could get to you to have this conversation, sort of thing. And you can see in there that she still kind of wants
to do the good
thing, but doesn't know how to do that anymore, and becomes more extreme in what she's willing to do. But you don't have that extended exploration of that. It is just, well, I killed some people.
I guess I'll keep healing.
I'll keep doing it. I'll just keep going.
Yeah. It's again frustrating because so much of why she's an interesting character is like she has this matriarchal figure that took care of her as an orphan, and in multiple senses, were all these things. And she's trying to do the right thing for all these people, and again that turn where she's like, well, now I'm a bad guy. Then they go back on it, but it doesn't feel right because that you can't fix that mistake of her suddenly deciding to blow up apropos like of nothing really. And then you're right, she just is this, she stops being as interesting because they kind of flattened her.
Yes.
Like I said, I think a lot of the characters, like, it's like those like the like street art from a certain angle that looks like a bus, but is actually just at this angle. This person like made it so that it looked 3D, but if you like walk 3 paces, you would see. That's like so many of the characters in this. Like they seem like they've got this depth, but then the show itself pans the camera over and shows that this is actually 2D art.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, but I wanted you tricked me with the 3D. And it's not a question of time, even though I think a longer series could help. Some of this is just like not doing these weird choices, not making her the big bad, or having another one, even just having another one of her super soldier friends be egging her on or something, right? Instead of them all being like, are you sure, that would make sense, because then you could fill in that depth of they're feeding off each other, and like that's
Absolutely,
a
yes.
simple thing that just gives depth to the characters. And
Hmm.
ultimately that fight was just like talking at each other. Sam, why don't you fight me? Why don't you fight back? Because Sam has got to be this perfect paragon of, I get that you are representing the downtrodden, so I won't hurt you. But it's also, but that's again trying to have your cake and eat it too with
Yeah.
Carly, because actually she's a murderer and she was trying to murder people, and your job is to stop murderers. So you're being a bad hero, but because they want her to be the Carly of the first two episodes, and in that scene, make you forget the last two
Yeah,
episodes we've
yeah.
seen, and then just makes the fight scene seem really, really strange,
It does.
right? Like,
You would think that Sam at least would, if he doesn't want to hurt her, that there's some way for him to subdue her at least, to make to make an arrest, if that's what's kind of they're thinking they would want to do. Like, he doesn't want to kill her, but at the same time, and from what he says, he doesn't want to fight her. But there's got to be some kind of subduing of her, because otherwise she'll just keep fighting you forever.
well, and also yeah, you've got this magic Wakandan armor, which I did the research. The original Falcon armor was made by the Navy,
Right.
according to MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very strange that the Wakandans could make the same thing that reacts the same way he's used to in the perfect ways, and also design the robot, etc., which now there are two of. It was one of those things where, yeah, it's Wakanda, like,
Just
they're the
magic
tech
place.
people.
Magic
they'll
place.
just post you a new suit.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, but it again doesn't hold up to scrutiny, because it's like, well, they didn't make the first one, so even if they made an armor, could it? Sure, fine. Again, I get nitpicky when there's so many threads to pull versus just letting it go. But that's just an armor, right? So the whole point is she's got a super soldier thing, which is the MacGuffin of generic power that he doesn't have.
Yep.
And we've seen that a Captain America with that with it isn't enough, because that's John Walker's arc, right? But suddenly now he's able to hold her off while she's just angry fighting him, and he's not even fighting back, but he's doing better than when he fights back. And you're like, this is plot armor. You're literally wearing plot armor. Yeah. So fight me, and then Sharon shoots her, because that way Captain America can just not have done any possible wrong from any possible angle. And she says, I'm sorry to him. And it was the most so infuriating, because then she just lets go. Like, you've made her a zealot. That's now her arc. I didn't like that you did that, but you did. And now you're trying to make her repent in her last breath?
Yeah.
Like, good Lord, stop doing this to your characters. Just let her be bad. And also, she shot twice in the midsection and dies immediately, and Sharon's shot once and is still alive to this day. I'm pretty sure she never got bandaged up after it.
I mean, it speaks again to the whole sort of series, and the idea that I really wanted this series to be really grey, everything to be in the middle, but they've not made it grey and in the middle. They have gone, well, now they're here and now they're right down here, and yes, they balance out, and it is grey because they're doing both bits. So
it turns out averages aren't always the best
exactly
measure. Yeah.
Yes, and Carly is the exact example of that. She's up here, she's down here, she's up here, she's down here, she's up here, whereas she needed to be this, and she could have blipped up a little and she could have blipped down a little, but she kind of needed to sit in that grey space. Sometimes she did, sometimes she's fucking purple over there somewhere, and it just didn't quite work. And I think that's, I don't need to wrap up anything else really. I think that's my thought on the whole thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it didn't work, and it was because it was just inconsistent.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, those last episodes very much felt like wrapping everything up quickly. So, for example, as if the government would be like, look, some other government gave you a suit with, does it have camera tech, privacy tech, spy tech? Who knows? But some other government gave you a suit, and now you're just and you stole the shield that we really want to pretend is ours, even though we don't. The shield you have, and you're just proclaimed yourself Captain America, and we're cool with it. So cool with it that we're also going to let you pull up one of our dirty secrets that a plot point earlier was they would never let you pull up this dirty secret and put it in the fucking Smithsonian in the Captain America
Yep.
exhibit. And they've done it already, like a week later or whatever. It's just like, no. So yeah, so time also is weird in the show, but we've sort of touched on that with the montages. Let's just wrap it up with a quick bit of fuck you final speech. That's what I'm calling this segment, because first of all, it's just a bad scene. He just stopped some bad guys, and then he just gives a 7-minute speech on TV that everyone happens to be watching, and no one interrupts him. The senator's fine afterwards. The senator, like, it's like, you got to do better, and the guy's like, do you understand how complicated it is? Like, and he's like, no, but you should do better. And the guy's like, you're right, I should do better. And like, fuck you, you're degraying any of the nuance of this show. Like, in this speech, you're basically like, it's actually none of it was a big deal the whole time because I said so.
Yeah.
And you're like, and it's just sad. Like, the senator is supposed to be the bad guy, but you understand his point of view. But the writers just decided, or someone, or the studio, I don't know, but just like, what if we didn't have any gray areas? The point is, we need to find a place for these people, and we need to pay for one. And it's really complicated because money doesn't come out of nowhere. He's like, you could just make money and move borders. Like, what do you mean you could just move borders? Do you know what the history of the world is? Have you heard of, let's say, the Middle East, for example? Borders aren't a thing you can click your fingers and change. I'm pretty sure the Infinity Gauntlet can't solve that crisis. Like, it's really complicated. That's the point.
Absolutely.
That's why the Flag Smashers are gray. That's why you can see why the GRC seems to be doing it. Like, the rest of the show is the GRC is doing this with muscle. They even say we should, like, the American guys, like, we've got the people, just push them out. And they're like, if someone else dissented, they're like, we shouldn't be using armed forces to do this.
Yes.
And then I guess what he's saying is, make land, change border, use armed forces, make their problem go away. Like, it's unclear what he says they can do, but they all agree that they could have done it all along. But also, I'm black, and so people might think it's bad that I'm being Captain America, and I'll have to deal with that. Oh, let's cut away and show that the one person who represents those people is cool with it. So even this bit that he's acknowledging is a conflict, the world isn't actually in a conflict. Don't worry, TV watcher. It's all fine. Everything's fine. Race is fine. Class is fine. The rich people were just not thinking hard enough, or they didn't want to, and they could, and they will now because a guy in a suit with wings told them to. And it's just so patronizing to the actual world and the fictional world. It doesn't make sense in either, and it really is bad for the audience. Like, it just literally, to me, was 5 minutes of why this show let me down. Like, they're just like, here are the ways we're letting you down in real time. And I like, so I can like the show because it was fun, action, etc. But all the interesting things they brought up, they really hammered home in that 5-minute scene of why they didn't pull it off.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. Maybe just sad. Anyway, I needed that rant, etc. Good. Do you have any final thoughts?
I know they've just greenlit or are in talks about Captain America 4 as a film, which you would imagine is going to revolve around Sam. And who knows what's going to kind of come from that. I think, when we first talked about this show, wanted to see how it would affect the world going for the MCU, the world of the MCU, how it would affect it going forward. And they've, as we've talked about, tried to do bits and unsuccessfully moved the state of stuff on, I think. So we come out of the end of this not really having progressed much from the beginning of it. it kind of sets out to say we want to do this, we haven't done it, and there's been absolutely no point in any of this whatsoever, apart from to make Sam Captain America, to move
Wing
on
Boy
the
now
next
has
part.
Shield.
Yes, it seems like it was fun in places. Some of the characters are excellent. Introduces characters that I think will be very good going forward, like John Walker and stuff, dependent on kind of how that's then used, sort of. But the big issues that it wanted to address weren't really addressed, and it doesn't put us in a place to be like, wow, the world is now going to be different. We can see how that will then push through into the other shows and films that are going to be coming from this. It didn't have that big kind of pivotal moment that the films have. You know, you get to the end of the film, it's like, right, stuff has changed for the better or for the worse. We can see what the situation is. There's no change.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that I hadn't appreciated, was just how empty the series is. And it's not about movie versus TV show or like wanting the MCU to progress. It's the fact that the characters haven't moved. You're right, that like it's like someone sort of hit reset on the board and then we got back to the same positions, essentially. So things that changed, well, so the Flag Smashers existed and then stopped existing, although I think Carly's not dead. That's why she was brought to a stretcher. He put her down on a stretcher, and then he had a speech, and they rolled her away. I think that's at least them bookmarking her as potentially to come back, depending how popular she is. Which also makes me hope Flag Smashers aren't gone, but they really feel like the movement's decimated because they took over the app, right? That was one of the MacGuffins of how do you catch 5 other super soldiers when they make the big deal that they can't stop one? Oh, guys with guns and an app. So there's that. John Walker's new. Okay, Bucky, before this, we knew he had healed himself. Like, psychologically, in his time when Wakanda was great, and last time we saw him, he was more grounded and no longer the Winter Soldier. He's in a good mental place. We start the show with, actually, he's got some issues, and he needs to work through addressing the people he's harmed. And then we end it with, he's in a good place mentally. So actually, Bucky's gone nowhere.
Yeah.
He could easily have, those issues have been solved with all his Wakanda treatment and nothing would have changed when we didn't know otherwise until the show started and it ended and it was fine. So Wing Boy has S.H.I.E.L.D. That's his arc. His family still has a house and a boat.
Yes.
Nothing's changed. Yep. Right? Wing Boy has S.H.I.E.L.D. Sharon's got pardoned. Zemo's in jail. Ha! Oh, he's in a different jail, though.
In a different country.
Yeah, and we didn't even really know that he wasn't in the raft before, because I think we just found out he was in a Berlin jail instead. It's nothing moved. If they said he was in the raft in the next movie, and this show didn't happen, we're like, yeah, I remember he was arrested. They probably put him in the raft.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So nothing. Everything is just like this vacuous move, which is okay for a series, I guess, but not when it's part of this experiment. But also, just it's telling that Zemo starts in a jail, ends in a jail. Bucky was fine, then we realize he isn't fine, then he's fine. Yeah. So I think that's a good way of. You pointed. You didn't realize just how MCU empty it was. And you could just throw it out and be fine.
It's gonna be. I know someone, whether it's a showrunner or producer, has come out and said, or someone in Marvel's TV department have turned around and said, WandaVision, it was its own kind of thing. It'd be very hard for us to recreate that as a second series, but there's potential from what we've been doing that Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki will have second series. And Loki, I could see that. He's kind of removed from the movie galaxy goings on to kind of do whatever this kind of time shifting or jumping show is going to be. Looks very interesting. But Falcon and the Winter Soldier leads straight into blockbuster movie Captain America #4, how do we go from TV show to big film, then back down to TV
Oh,
show to maybe big film again?
I think that is potentially fine because I mean, if one of the things we have learned in this pandemic times is like movies can be consumed at home as 2-hour stories,
Yeah.
and so if you think of it that way, and you think of this as a 6-episode miniseries that you also stream on the same service, I think that's fine. I think the scope has to be when you're telling a longer something in like one story in a long part versus one story in several parts, you're going to need a different type of story.
Yep.
I think that's fine. I actually wouldn't mind more playing up and down the rungs of in that what makes sense for this type of story. Oh, we want to put Captain America through these paces. Well, should it be a 6-hour miniseries, a 12-hour miniseries, or a movie? If the problem I have then is like we do have a notion of TV series linking each other. This like even if time passes, you shouldn't have to watch a movie in the middle to understand. That's the thing that's kind of frustrating. But again,
Yes.
if the only way to access it is Disney Plus and the new movie's also on Disney Plus, that's probably just I'm not used to new things, right? I think that's okay. But
well, I
guess my worry is that they if the reason why they're saying they can do this is because nothing changed, so we can slot these in whenever we have the time and money and availability. I don't want these things. Like
Yes,
I wanted
absolutely.
more out of this, and I'm fine with it not getting it, but I don't want this to be the norm.
Yeah.
Of like you've really opened my eyes with that observation. I'm still kind of reeling from the no one changed states in 6 hours.
And as we say, we don't want that, and it's going to be Captain America 4 could happen. It can be this big kind of pivotal shifting moment for the MCU, as lots of these kinds of films are, or at least for the character on some of these sort of standalone kind of character films. But it will shift them to a point, and then do we just come back for like a wet weekend in New York with Sam and Bucky just hanging out, stopping bad guy number 2, on a very small scale, grounded kind of level, versus Captain America 4, which will probably be a bit more world shifting. It's that my worry is that scale will come back down and just be boring, and they won't move people on, and it's only in the films that things move, and the series are just like addendums to that.
Well, there's like it's like this is a series of like anime filler episodes. Like, oh, the manga hasn't caught up, so we'll have a series of events with a new bad guy. But because the manga is the actual source material, we can't have anyone really change or progress, because when we loop back in, the story is actually here.
It's just Goku powering up a spirit bomb for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Just sat there like, and everyone else doing a few little things, fighting Cell or something. Like,
yeah, so it's just, that is the worry. I mean, one of the things that I worry about with the way the MCU movies have gone is that they just keep going bigger.
Yes.
And that's unsustainable. I mean, we killed all the half-life, whatever that means. God, I've ranted about what that means in previous places. But of the universe, and then we fixed it. This was like at least galaxy level in the sense of the people and whatever, but now we're doing multiverses, and it's like but like and even Spider-Man movies, which Spider-Man as a character is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and the 3 MCU Spider-Man have been quite big and in all kinds of places in the world, and he's the small time one, and he has a magic suit for parts of them, and all the stuff, and you're like, we're missing out on those small stories. But you're right, like if you use the same characters and you make it vacuous, especially, you don't give a reason why we care about stopping this one crook.
Yep.
Versus the end of all time and space as we know it, or whatever. It's never going to work, because you've chosen to set our expectations on this path, and then any drop out of it is going to be boring. But also, it's like the stakes are unclear. So one of the things I liked about the Marvel Netflix shows, even though they all kind of fell off pretty quick, is that they were small and they were grounded, and you got to learn characters, and they felt good for at least a time before I think they just didn't quite have the way to finish seasons or second seasons or whatever. But like that's why that works, is because you have these characters in the universe who aren't part of the big team, and it's much harder to make a Bucky and Captain America go from being on the big team to, like you said, being on the downtime and make us care, because the narrative has told us that they operate on this scale.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's a good place to. Oh, we've got a question.
Maybe. Who knows? That might appear. Oh, yes.
Aha. Yes, we got a question from the chat. Amy Chibi says, "Is there any scene in the 6 episodes that made you think at some point could this be a Skrull in disguise, considering Skrulls will appear later?" Yes, so we touched on this earlier. Basically, most of Sharon's heel turn of episode 6, but especially her immediately leaving magically getting her job back, and they're being like, "I've got access, get ready to sell," which was like, yeah, that could be a power broker line, but it really seems like she's way more evil than her character ever should be. So either this is very terrible writing of the character because it just doesn't connect to her past, or she's not really who she says she is. Any other ones, Ben?
I was going to say, with that, it's hard to kind of, if we're thinking that she's been sort of, when did that happen? At what point has that turn kind of happened? Has she been a Skrull possibly for the entire series? Did that happen at some point during this run, and that's why we've seen a bit of a shift in character?
I think this explains. So this potentially explains my big problem with her rise to power, is because she just like isn't telegraphed as a person who, like, she's just a good agent. So how did she become a good power broker? How did she have enough time to rise through those ranks, etc.? But if she was a Skrull, and given that according to the fandom wikis, she was snapped.
Mm-hmm.
What if she was snapped and blipped, but caught when she got blipped?
Yes.
But actually, there was a pseudo Sharon during that 5 years, or before that 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I just don't understand how she gets all the power of the power broker, especially with a 5-year gap, but just in general, because it's very odd. But I think any moves towards power brokers where if she turns out to be a Skrull, it'll be explained by like this entire rise to power was exploiting the bits of connection she had, and maybe her grounding in Madripoor. What I find, what's still kind of a big question is, where are the people who the Skrulls replaced?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only thing that sort of tickles me there. Because if it was pre-snap, then she would be blipped back to where she was being held. But I think they're going to say it wasn't. In which case, did she start doing the art theft stuff to stabilize, then get scrolled, and then they used that power, her stability story, to then become the power broker?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just think they didn't think about the timelines with the power broker is the big problem.
Amy Chibi also says, you think it's possible there is a Skrull in Wakanda. From what we've seen in Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't know, but I think it's possible that there are Skrulls everywhere.
I think
they have infiltrated all levels of stuff. We were saying sort of earlier in the conversation, how is this going to play out over the next slate of films? Is it going to just sort of be brought in Captain Marvel 2? We know that what's his face, Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange, is a multiverse kind of film, but possible that it kind of plays in a little bit in there, but I don't think it will. Can come in with Captain Marvel 2. Maybe it touches on it in Black Panther 2 as well, but I think that's the Skrulls is kind of going to be this Avenger level threat. As kind of Loki and the staff and Thanos sort of pulling the strings was in the first Avengers film. I think that it will build up to that point. So I think we'll see little hints of them until Captain America 2, which will fully pull it all in, and then we'll have this, another team up film, because they've infiltrated all of these parts of society and they need to deal with it as such.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Skrulls are going to be kind of just like this blip we had. So like the end in WandaVision, we had an actual Skrull reveal, right?
Mm.
Um, Here we end with something's weird with Sharon. So I think Black Widow is in the past,
Yes.
so that won't have anything, or it might just tease us to tell us they've been around for long enough. I think definitely there are some in Wakanda. I wouldn't be surprised if like our senator boy is a Skrull, for
Mm.
example.
Mm.
If it, you know, that would make more sense in why he's playing multiple generic politician roles. Although it could just be expediency of production. Um, so the docket is what: Black Widow, uh, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Thor, Black Panther 2, Captain Marvel 2. So I think by Captain Marvel 2 we're going to have Skrulls more front and center.
Mm.
But I don't actually think, given that the Fantastic Four traditionally are Skrull enemies and they're supposedly coming, I'm wondering how long the Skrulls will be an enemy. Like whether it'll be like that Thanos buildup, like you were said, or whether it's just like, yeah, they're the big bad in Captain Marvel 2. Just because there isn't we haven't heard of a Avengers style, bring everything together super event yet, and it would make sense given that they're doing all this that there will be one.
Mm.
So yeah, I think the next few movies seem like the Eternals is just introducing the Eternals. There might be some cameo Skrulls, so to speak, like throwaway stuff. But I think we'll basically just be seeing them pop their heads in and out, or just have people acting a little weird, and some of those will be red herrings. Like Sharon might not be a Skrull, right? But she sort of seems like she is because this is so weird for Sharon. But it might be one of my complaints about the red herrings is that like sometimes it's like, well, they're acting weird because we want you to think this, but actually they were just acting weird. Like what's his name, Quicksilver.
Yes. Yeah.
He
From
was a red
WandaVision.
herring
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
using the same actor at the supra contextual level, and people got annoyed at that. And maybe multiverse will bring him back in a way that satisfies
Mm.
that or not. But I think Skrulls will be a slower burn, but that also means that like they'll be in the next slate.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any feels from any of the Wakandan guards that they are Skrulls, although that might explain the thing that we called the plot hole earlier, which is why would they take him to the raft and not
And not to
Zemo to the
Wakanda.
raft and not Wakanda? What if the raft is where they're amassing people that are
Ooh.
useful?
Ooh. And I had a thought as well. The character with the really long name who turns up, Julie Louise Dufresne.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that she is, and by bringing in now what's he called, US agent, she's creating this kind of alternate Avengers team to do their kind of bidding, whether that kind of plays in as well, rather than us having like an alternate Avengers like X-Force. They're the ones that do all the dirty jobs and that sort of thing. The X-Men are the team that go out and save things, and the X-Force are the ones that kind of assassinate people when it's kind of needed. I don't want that from like another Avengers sort of team. There's so many like West Coast Avengers and all these different things that you could try and do, but that might make sense in terms of the Skrulls wanting some kind of higher powered people to sort of back them up. And I don't know how that would play out, whether they would brainwash them or whatever that would do, but there might be an inkling of them building a team as well. And like John Walker is, at least from what we know, maybe the first addition to that, because she was an odd character. Just the way she presented and talked, and it could just be that character. I don't know who that character is. I'm not that deep in
Lore.
Marvel lore to know, so potential there as well, maybe.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say is I'm really hopeful that Zemo on the raft is creating a Thunderbolts because he'll have access to people, and like him and 5 people break out, but because he does have this specific, like twisted but like specific moral, super people are bad. We need less of them, and that's what I'm trying to do. I think having him, he's a founder of the Thunderbolts, and I think it would be really cool if they brought that in. Again, this will be like in 5 years or whatever, but like they keep filling up the raft, and the reason is because then we can have a Thunderbolts,
Hmm.
and then there's interaction historically between the Avengers and Winter Soldier and the Thunderbolts, etc. And I think that would be a really cool thing. And I'm hoping, I like the fact that we can look at the comics and try and predict what parts of Marvel universe will become parts of MCU.
Yeah, as Amy Chibi's just said, Red Hulk at some point. That was exactly what I was thinking as well. Are we gonna at some point get a Hulk film? It's this. Did we have a Red Hulk in one of the Hulk films that aren't
No,
part of the MCU? Has it ever appeared, or was it? It
no,
was
no.
Abomination,
Thunderbolt
wasn't
Ross has
there?
always been just a dude.
Yeah. So,
Rolk, loved Rolk. I have a Lego Rolk somewhere.
so I think there is definitely potential for that as well. And I was going to mention, just as kind of like my final thought, how we can kind of see maybe the TV shows and the films working quite well in tandem when you get to these big events, as we kind of do with the comics, right? We have a 5-10 episode run of a big event, and then in each individual comic for these characters, we have little tie-ins and crossovers and those sorts of things. And I could see that happening with the TV shows. So suddenly we get to sort of Captain Marvel 2, and it's like, here is the big bad, and then Falcon or Captain America Winter Soldier has season 2 or 3 or whatever it may be by that point, and it's its own self-contained element dealing with the Skrulls without having to come into this big Avengers level movie. That actually you have an Avengers level event, but it's 3 or 4 different things all tying in together that kind of all don't have to be watched together. The Captain Marvel 2 will be the film to watch for this part. There's just lots of stuff that kind of builds into this going forward.
Yeah, I mean, and we know the Secret Invasion is going to be a TV series at some point.
Yeah.
They announced it, but not when, which is why I think we'll only be teased in Black Panther 2. And we'll have Skrulls introduced as a big bad, reintroduced or dealt with in maybe Marvel 2, but not the invasion. That might be the stingery revelation of the big bad, like, oh, I'm not the only one, or something like that. Like, so that there's stakes for Captain Marvel. We're reminded more about Skrulls.
No, I haven't heard about supposed leak in Marvel. Ooh.
Oh, well, wait. This just in, supposed leak.
This is where we find out Amy Chibi is the leak.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
It's just like, what do you think about then just doing some research? Like, hey, what do you like? You guys like what Red Hulk? Well, we'll put Red Hulk in. That's fine.
Yeah, where the Secret Invasion comes possibly after Captain Marvel 2 as well. It's kind of the first show, as WandaVision was, to kick everything off, where the Secret Invasion will be the thing that will then kick off Phase 2, or not 2, Phase 6, 5. Fuck knows now. Amy Chibi says, and Kate Bishop, it says that Hawkeye movie, Hawkeye retires and is replaced by Kate Bishop. Yeah, we're getting a Hawkeye TV show, I think, as well, which is being filmed. And Kate Bishop is the new Hawkeye, will eventually join US Agent 2 to create West Coast Avengers. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, so we also got a hint of this Kate Bishop stuff with the Avengers game having both Hawkeyes, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that this makes sense.
And we're getting a Moon Knight TV show as well.
Sorry?
We're getting a Moon Knight TV show as well.
Yes.
He's a West Coast Avenger.
Yeah, I think. Oh, yeah, is he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So this makes sense. It's also a very good way of passing the guard, because like Jeremy Renner is part of the old guard. He's still around, so giving him finally his character some screen time, even if it's on TV show, makes sense. But also, I kind of like the idea. This is very smart, so I hope it's true. Of like the Avengers, they did their thing, and now they can't. They're very basically all like, we're done. And then to have the West Coast Avengers be the response, not versus the Avengers doing these things, and we're kind of the B team. And so sometimes we go out. It's not clear why they're just busy. Like that's always been the tension, right? But to have the West Coast Avengers be like, the world needs Avengers, and we're the new group, and having like it makes sense then that like Mark Ruffalo's in She-Hulk, and maybe She-Hulk is. I don't remember where She-Hulk is. I don't think we've been told where it's set, but
I think
the West Coast.
I think she's New York, isn't
New
she?
York, right?
Yeah.
She is normally, but I'm saying I don't know if they move her
Right.
to like LA or something, such that then we have Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Captain Marvel in a pinch, and then they all come together as a secret invasion. Bing bang boom.
Nice. We've done it.
All you need is someone in a suit, which it's probably what's his name?
Samuel L. Jackson.
No, Don Cheadle, Rhodey.
War Machine. Yeah.
He wasn't really an Avenger, so he could join. He's a B team. He can join the B team, right? God, I'm the meanest.
Oh, poor Rhodey.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. That all makes sense. It's very logical, but I hope, and I'm actually fine with it being telegraphed this far ahead. That doesn't change anything for me. I don't think it's a huge spoiler. It makes a lot of sense because then you get to do the same types of things, and I like that it's playing a lot in the TV space, because I think one of the complaints people have about the Avengers is like it took 3 movies, but you still didn't learn a lot about the characters. So doing like a Moon Knight series, they're like, this is Moon Knight, Hawkeye, new Hawkeye, and then She-Hulk, new She-Hulk. Then you get to do all that stuff without having to make 3 blockbusters in order to bring them all together.
I agree. Yeah, and I mean, Wolverine's been on every single possible team in existence in Marvel, hasn't he? I don't know. I don't think they're ready for mutants yet. I think they're still going to hold off on that a little bit.
I like X-Men, but I'm glad that they're not rushing to bring them in. Just because it's just not been. The film hasn't been good to the X-Men for the past few movies, and it's okay. And actually, letting like Hugh Jackman obviously age out of the role is also a very shrewd move, because boy are people attached to him as Wolverine. And you need a Danny DeVito. You need a small guy, because that's the whole point. Is Wolverine is a small guy.
Oh mate, that would be amazing. I'd like him. I'd really like them to bring the actress who played X-23 in Logan back, but I know Logan is kind of this removed thing as well. Like it's one of the only it's the only X-Men film I don't think that's on Disney Plus at the moment. I would think that's more to do with its certification than rights or something like that. But it kind of Logan was removed, but Laura Kinney could come back absolutely as X-23. And she doesn't have to be a mutant, as we've sort of seen with Scarlet Witch. They've rewritten that character to not be a mutant and have mutant sort of abilities. It was just other stuff.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all fine. Don't get attached to the shit from the comics. Let them remix it.
Yeah. Cool. Nice.
Ghost Rider would also be cool to bring back. Although without Nicolas Cage, is it really a Ghost Rider? Answer is yes. Boy, are those fun films. But I think we've sort of come to the end of our time for this week's episode. So thanks to everyone who tuned in, like, follow, subscribe on whatever platform you happen to be listening and or watching us on. If you have thoughts about Falcon and the Winter Soldier or upcoming things you want us here at Geek Out Weekly to talk about, send us an email at podcast@outoflives.net or a tweet at outoflivesnet. Or Ben directly at Nova_47, myself directly at the Omniarch. Head over to outoflives.net for other videos, podcasts, articles, pop culture, gaming stuffs. That's it. Like, subscribe, support, tell a friend. Come back next week. We're normally live every Monday at noon. This week we're a couple days shy of that. Past that. I know how words work. Yep, that's about it. But that's us.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
www.outoflives.net